Connolly.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I want to thank the Minister for his very comprehensive statement and setting it out. I welcome that. I also welcome the policy, which is just the second policy in the history of the state, and the first policy started in 2019, and significantly that was the year where we promised transformative action, wasn't it, when we declared a climate and a biodiversity emergency, and we really never got that transformative action. So if I just look at this first and ask maybe some practical questions and then go back to pick up on some of the themes that the last speaker spoke about. So the policy was launched a year ago and it's taken us almost longer, actually a year, to discuss it, which is significant in itself. 58 pages, 5 key objectives and 57 actions. I welcome that there's a stakeholder engagement group to provide oversight. Has that stakeholder engagement group met? How many times has it met? Are there minutes available? And an annual report will be published on the implementation. Has an annual report been published? It's over a year since the strategy was published. Where is the annual report? And picking up on the previous speaker, we were promised transformative action. And that transformative action really hasn't come. And I'm very positive about this strategy, but I'm worried about its implementation. And I'm worried about it being sidelined to the main growth economy that will do business as usual. And we know from COVID and we know from the climate emergency that we cannot continue with the same model with endless growth for growth's sake. And there's a complete difference between a growth economy and a thriving economy. And the social enterprise that you've outlined here and the strategy is not just a small part of that, it has to be a fundamental part of that. And it's interesting that we had no figures actually until 2023 when your department rightly commissioned a report on the data. It took until 2023 to get that. So that gives an indication how little value we put on social enterprise. And that research told us that there were 4,335 social enterprises nationally. The total income of social enterprises in 2021 was 2.34 billion. That's the total income. And then almost 85,000 people are employed by social enterprises. That is 3.7% of the Irish workforce, and that has huge scope for increase in the number of people employed. And then there's the volunteers that work alongside that, nearly 75,000 volunteers, without whom the social enterprises could not succeed. Women, of course, make up the vast majority, almost 70% of the total workforce of social enterprises, and 68% are concentrated in 4 sectors, again, which is very significant. Childcare, of course, dominated by women, community infrastructure and local development, health, youth services and social care, heritage, festivals, arts and creative industry. Again, all of these areas are vital to a thriving economy. 75% of social enterprises focus on a local market, and in rural areas, a previous speaker, but in rural areas, 84% of enterprises focus on a local market, which is really important. Last week, or a week before, I'm losing track of time and dates, Minister, but I was down with a group of people in their heading. Their organisation is Talamh Bio, and they grow sustainably. And they pointed out to me that there's actually no policy for sustainable growth in that manner, where they supply the local community and the local areas and the local businesses. There's absolutely no policy there, which is a gap. Then the annual social enterprise empowerment and development allocation, the SEED, needs to be looked at and worked on as well. So I'll go back to more general points now after quoting all of those, and just to say that most of the staff, of course, are employed under community employment schemes, or TUS. And again, we've seen repeated efforts to reduce the money and the importance paid to those TUS, community employment schemes, and the rural schemes, all of the time working with very little money and struggling from year to year. So what I would like to see is a transformative change, Minister, under your watch, and you've made a good attempt with a very good opening statement here. I would like to see it actually mean something, and that it would be transformative action that is required so that our rural communities can survive. And a point was made earlier by my colleague Mairid Farrell in Galway West. Carrow has no infrastructure. Now, you might say, what has that got to do with social enterprise? But if you don't have a sewage treatment plant to allow houses to be built, to allow small enterprises to develop, then we're in serious trouble here. So the social enterprise can only come along with basic infrastructure. We have in Galway some wonderful examples of social enterprises. We have the Galway Artisan Workshop. We have the Bounce Back Recycling in Ballybrit, mattress and furniture recycling. And I can tell you, over 20 years ago, we had 25 years ago now nearly, we had presentations in relation to recycling mattresses and many, many other materials that was never put into action. So I welcome that this is happening, but the people were way ahead of us in Galway City. We have the Galway Online Community Radio, which is really important as a social enterprise, and it aims to give ethnic minorities a voice in Irish media. Then we have the Skull Sanctuary in Clarenbridge. I can't read them all out. We have on Mehel Ruher, and we have the Galway Community Circus. In Athenry, of course, we have the Green Bean Cafe. All over the islands, we have examples of cooperatives working together, whether it's for energy or to organise the various schemes that keep the islands going. So my worry, and I really, the previous speaker has said it better than me, is simply that it's looked on as a sideline, as an addition. And when we go back to labour activation schemes, we talk about it in such narrow terms. We bring in private companies that really should have nothing to do with social enterprises or with labour activation schemes. We've seen what has happened in England. And we put an emphasis on very, very narrow criteria, and we don't value what social enterprises are doing for the environment in relation to the sustainable goals which we all treasure and which were laid out by the UN, and we must comply with the sustainable goals, and they have to be mentioned at every single opportunity that we have. So I'll stop, Minister, by saying I praise the opening statement, but I really would like to see a hands-on approach. I'd like to see the annual report or a date for it. I'd like to see the minutes being published of the oversight, because we've had so many strategies, so many plans in so many areas without any accountability and without a review, a constant review. Most of all, I'd like to see economists who treasure their role as economists put a value on all the matters that they have put no value on. Social enterprise being top of the list. Carers. An economy can't thrive without carers being paid properly, again dominated by females. Domestic violence has never been valued. The cost of that to the Exchequer at a Conservative estimate of 2.5 billion. And you might rightly ask me, what has that got to do with social enterprise? It has everything to do with this male-dominated economic view that we can only, I apologise, some males, a male economic view of valuing certain aspects of an economy and ignoring the really important aspects that are never given an economic value. Gar míle maith.